Boom! Lovely, lovely, lovely. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here. We are live again. Welcome to ANCAP Radio. I am your host, the voice of liberty, Adam J. Carswell, joined by my partner in crime here today, Dave Henderson. I know Dave's coming to you from the other side of the world of where I'm at. I'm here in North America, Ontario, Canada, to be specific. We'll get Dave's location here in a moment. But before we do that, we just want to say hello and welcome to everyone with us live or on the replay. This is a first time guest we got on the show today, so we're really looking forward to it. If you're just tuning in again or on the replay, hit that like button, hit the retweet button, follow Dave, follow ANCAP Radio, toss me one as well, and we are going to dive into it here today with Joanne Skousen. So our team is getting her set up on the back end. We'll have her here with us in a moment, but in the meantime, Dave, how are you? Where are you tuning in from, and what are you looking forward to in today's conversation?
Hi, Adam. Well, I'm tuned into from Christchurch, New Zealand on a winter's morning. And looking forward to talking with our guest today, Joanne Skousen, who has got one of the most delightful pedigrees in the libertarian world. And particularly, she is the husband of Mark Skousen, and Mark and her run a fantastic libertarian conference. You've been to it in the past, Adam, and I was very fortunate to be a guest there last year, called Freedom Fest, which is a significant event celebrating a significant number of people in the libertarian world every year. And Joanne runs, in coordination with that, a wonderful event called the Anthem Film Festival. And the Anthem Film Festival, of course, celebrates a variety of productions, feature films, documentaries, that run a libertarian theme. And these are productions from literally all around the world that make entries, I think, and Joanne will tell us when she comes online, but I think last year she told me she had something like 150 entries from all around the world, which Joanne sifts through with both personally with a panel of judges, and then narrows them down to a group which are featured at the festival every year, and then from there she and the audience select a number of winners. But it's a fabulous event because the film festival, because it does celebrate some very cool themes that are important to advance and celebrate and give profile to in the libertarian world.
Absolutely. It's a great conference. I've been there. It feels like 5 or 6 times, but now that I think about it, I've been there a couple times, and I've only been to it in Vegas. I am actually just curious because you've been to the different ones, and also Anthem. I didn't realize it was always in tandem with Freedom Fest as well. But do you find much of a difference between when they change the venue or the location up?
Oh, Adam, I've only ever been once, sadly, which was last year in Memphis.
Oh, that was it. That was the first one.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I know they're back in Vegas running it this year, and I've been to Vegas many times, and of course it's a destination that was almost designed for big events, and so it is a perfect setting for Freedom Fest, and with that, the Anthem Film Festival.
Absolutely. And I do see we're getting closer and closer to our guest being all set up here. I can tell our team's working with her on the back end to get her unmuted. But on the note of Anthem, because I knew that you had written a book that did well and was picked up by some producers, but I didn't realize just the proximity from a timing perspective to us going live here today. For some reason, I thought this was something that happened for you. For them turning into a film was like, I don't know, 5, 10, even 15 years ago. But this was last year, right? The film based on the book you authored was the winner.
Oh well, yeah, it ended up being the winner of the feature film at the Anthem Film Festival last year, so that was very flattering. So,
I
yeah.
love it. And I do believe it looks like we're all set. We're ready to rock here. I might have you do one more just brief bio, brief background, and a little bit on Joanne. But Joanne, can you confirm? Can you hear us on Twitter now?
I can, and I'm delighted to be with you and delighted to talk with Dave again. His film was so much fun and so heroic. And I was watching it downstairs. My husband was working upstairs. And at the very end, I started cheering. I was so excited for how it ends. And he came down to see what was going on. So I had to have that film. And I was delighted that Dave could come and represent the film at the festival, and he was on a couple of panels. And it turns out that we're really close friends with the same libertarian mentor, Doug Casey. I've known Doug for years, and so it was great to meet Dave last year in Memphis, and this year we're in Las Vegas.
Uh, well, it was such a delight to meet you, Joanne, and of course, Mark. You guys were very generous to me, which meant a lot. But and of course, as we know, it's always such a wonderful delight when one meets genuine fellow travelers and can share values and share ideas and obviously enjoy their company, which is a big part of what ANCAP Radio is about, Joanne.
It is, and that's one of the reasons we started Freedom Fest. It's a place where like minds can meet, where we don't have to put on a mask and wonder whether we can reveal ourselves with various people in our work, our neighborhoods, and so forth. But we can really be ourselves and talk openly and communicate with like-minded people. It's almost like a revival meeting at Freedom Fest. So it was great to have you there, and you fit right in.
And of course, this year, which I've been enjoying getting the promo pieces for your event, Joanne, and this year, of course, you got Harvey Malay turning up there, which is seriously impressive.
Oh, we are
Both
so
that,
excited about that.
yeah, both that you could make it happen, and it's impressive that he turns up at events like that, isn't it?
It is, and he just kind of shows up. He doesn't like to do a lot of advertising. We've had to be really low key with our advertising. Normally, we would have been saying "Millet,
Sure,
Millet, Millet," but here
sure.
we had to
Sure.
just kind of hide him within six of our top speakers, and there he is with his great haircut and his great smile. And people said, "Is that really Millet? You're having Millet?" So, but he's very low key. I think he has to be that for security reasons. But
Yes.
he's coming, and he'll do a speech and Q&A, and we're hoping to do a VIP event, and he's going to meeting with some of our Latin American sponsors. So it's wonderful to have him. I'm so hopeful that he's going to be able to change Latin America. He can't do it all at once, but he has a great plan and great background.
And goodness me, hasn't he done well so far? I mean, it's just it's just sensational from our perspective. Just watching him, the executive steps that he's taken, and powers that he's exercised, and I mean, you and I know enough about economics to know that he will make a difference. Um, and it's so frustrating in my own country, in New Zealand, where we had a change of government at a similar time, and you know. Forgive the language, but they're just pissing around making the changes, if you know what I mean. Everyone's
Yeah.
sort of that they just don't have it roll in there wholesale and really hoe into things and make a difference. And we all know that if you muck around with it, if you just play at the edges, you just don't have the impact. And God knows we have an economy in the country that urgently needs it, but they would just play around with bits and pieces, the new government, and roll back a few things, but it will never be as brave and bold as what Malay is doing. And so, I mean, you're right. There is a high chance he will go down as one of the great presidents of Argentina, won't he?
I certainly hope so. I'm a little disappointed that some libertarian I hate to use the word purists, but that's
Yeah,
how they describe themselves, but are being very
sure.
critical of him because he's not doing everything all at once. And
Yes,
the man has to tread lightly because he has a lot of philosophical enemies. He's the first openly libertarian president to be elected in Latin America. He knows what needs to be done. He's well grounded, and he's going to go step by step. He can't dollarize all at once, but I'm a little disappointed at some of our libertarian friends who are
of
writing
course.
articles about him, because I think he's the first, and we need to be giving him our support. And so we're excited to have him come.
Fantastic. And tell me, Joanne, so let's talk about the Anthem Film Festival, which, of course, is a central part now of Freedom Fest every year. And you do such a fantastic job organizing and running that. And indeed, it's your baby, Joanne. And this is what, the 14th, 15th year uh, 14th year you've run Anthem Film Festival?
It is. I started it in 2011. We started Freedom Fest in 2007. And I just have a really strong belief in the power of storytelling. I think that you can listen to speeches, you can read essays, you can read books, and those are very valuable for information. But stories touch your heart, and when you have an emotional connection with a story, it stays with you. And I feel like in so many ways, the other side has mastered the art of storytelling, and they've taken over Hollywood. So it's in the independent films and other arts that we need to be stepping up our game. And I thought, if I start a film festival, maybe more people will start making films because they'll know that there's a venue for them. And my first festival was in this little 26th floor of Bally's hotel in Las Vegas, and we had a handful full of films and a handful of audience members because they couldn't find us. But out of
Right.
that handful, we had about half a dozen that were really good, and the following year we had more. And before long, people started making films, knowing that they had a place where they
Yeah.
would be welcomed, where there would be thoughtful interaction with the audience, where they could win awards that would help them get funding for their next festival or their next film. And now I'm at the point where I'm turning away good films because I just don't have time for all of them. So it's been very exciting to see how this little festival has had an impact on filmmaking and distribution and audiences as well.
Yes. Yeah. And tell me, give us some of the statistics for this year. For how many entries did you have at the outset?
So we had about 150 entries. We're still not a South by Southwest by any means, and we were able to accept about 30.
Yeah.
So about 20% are accepted. Um, and I'm sad about the ones that I couldn't find a place for, but I'm really thrilled with the ones we have. And it's interesting. Freedom Fest decided to use Brave New World as its theme this year. I don't do a theme for the film festival because you start a film long before I would be announcing a theme,
Right.
but it just turned out that so many of our films uh, fit the Brave New World. Brave New World is interesting. Of the three top dystopian future films that were made in the 30s and 40s, 1984,
Yeah.
Fahrenheit 451, and Brave New World, Brave New
Right.
World is the least dystopian. The people are happy there. They're taking their soma. They're going to the feelies, the movies. They're running around in their helicopter cars. They don't have to worry about child raising because the government is doing that. And yet there's no joy. There's no
Oh,
intellectual.
it looks like. Oh, there we go.
What's that?
Was that Dave? I'm sorry. Was that? Did I cut out there, or was that Joanne?
No, no, we're doing great here.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Continue, Joanne.
Okay.
Yeah.
It cut out for a moment there.
No,
I wasn't sure who it
no,
was.
we're talking about Brave New World, which is a fantastic movie, isn't it, Joanne?
Absolutely.
Fantastic
Absolutely.
movie, fantastic book. And as I was reviewing it earlier this year, so many concepts. For example, the idea of you'll be happy, you'll have nothing and you'll be happy. That keeps coming
Yeah,
out of Davos. You'll own nothing and you'll be happy. And that comes right out of the first 2 pages of Brave New World. And
right.
you're seeing it. And I ended up with 2 films that are about it. Another
How
thing in
cool.
Brave New World is that they create diversity. They create a caste system, 6 different classes of people. And notice how we are so focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion, but it's not really inclusion because there's so much exclusion going on within this diversification, and that comes out of Brave New World. And we have a couple of films about wokeness and how we can become unwoke through independent filmmaking, independent businesses, creating our own industries, and just not worrying about this greater wokeness. And I think companies are starting to realize that as well. They don't have to go woke. Some of the universities are as too. MIT has said, "Look, we're not going to use diversity as one of our criteria anymore." They don't even think it's legal to do that. But we've had this pressure over the last couple of decades, so we have films about that. Um,
Right.
about transgender, this pressure for children to be to change their genders, and we have films about the rush to get the vaccines out that caused a lot of injuries and damages. So lots of films that fit the category, the story of
Yeah.
Brave World.
Yeah. How fantastic. And Joanne, tell me, I remember last year, one of the things that seemed central was a subject that's very close to your heart, which was and a wonderful documentary, or a fictionalization, I should say, of a true story. There was about a uh,
Interaction, talking about.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, which was a fabulous story and an appalling story, but one that I know is close to your heart, and one that seems to be just a common theme, doesn't it? Is the incarceration of prisoners who fundamentally aren't guilty in their fight to try and seek some justice. It, yeah,
It really is appalling when you consider that prosecutors brag about getting it right 95% of the time. And most of the time you would consider 95% a great batting average, but that means that 5% of the time they get it wrong. And if they're convicting 2 million people a year, that means 100,000 people are incarcerated and are wrongfully convicted. That's appalling. And I
isn't it?
and I know many of them personally. One of our speakers last year, JJ Velasquez, was in prison for 24 and a half years for a crime he didn't convict. Didn't
Yes,
So we do have another film this year about prison. This time it's not about wrongfully convicted inmates, but about a writing program inside the San Diego prison. And some of those inmates who have been released will be at Freedom Fest to talk about the impact in their lives when this creative writing program was brought into the prison. And since I used to teach, I taught for 12 years at Sing Sing as a college professor teaching English literature and writing, and so it is very near and dear to my heart. I like to say many of my best friends are murderers,
it,
but they've been
isn't that great?
rehabilitated.
Yeah, and I have to tell you that was such a highlight for me, of being able to hang out at your film festival last year, was actually meeting JJ, who you just referred to, and what a fantastic story, horrific but fantastic, and what a wonderful job you had done in obviously assisting him and giving him courage, and then subsequently supporting him. And so I know that, as you just described, he was incarcerated. What was it, 23 years? Did you say?
Yes, he was sentenced 25 years to life. Dan Slepian of Dateline NBC uh, basically did the investigation that proved that he could not have done it. Um, but it took 24 years for him to not to get it overturned, but basically to have his sentence commuted. So he got out what 6 months early.
Yeah.
But many dark nights of tears on his pillow as he would be so close to getting an appeal, and then the district attorney, the prosecutors would re, would
Just
reject the request. So over and over again, he thought he was going to get out and then didn't. And I love his mother so much. I've met her a few times at our graduations and other events, and sometimes I'd see her trudging up the hill to after having visited him. And since I knew her, I would pick her up and give her a ride to her car. But she never gave
uh,
up on him, and a lot of
uh,
parents do. A lot of parents finally, after 20 years, either they die or they just say, "You're an embarrassment to me. I don't want anything more to do with you." But his mother
yeah.
never gave up.
How
So I admire
fantastic.
her too.
Well, you have an extraordinary and wonderful libertarian pedigree, but your efforts in those regards are, for me, a very significant part of that because putting effort in to assist anyone in those circumstances is just so admirable and, by my values, so important because I mean, that's as you just were describing a few moments ago. That's the real face of a sloppy, slack state, isn't it? The fact that one man ever gets incarcerated for something he didn't do is an appalling story. But as you were describing, 100,000 every year is just revolting and such an indictment on a society and a justice system.
That accepts it. The fact that they accept that 5% is okay, it is
Mm,
appalling. I should say not every year, but 2 million incarcerated at any
sure,
one time. So 100,000 at any one time. I
sure,
misspoke on
sure.
that. Another thing I love about the Hudson Link program, which sponsors the program at Sing Sing, is that it's privately funded. In 1995, Governor Pataki of New York decided to take away the Pell Grants that was funding inmate education because, as he said, and I agree with him, when middle class New Yorkers can't afford to send their kids to college, why should taxpayers be paying for criminals to get an
Right,
education? But then this organization started fundraising and managed to get enough money to keep the program going. It's been going for 25 years now, and in the first 15 years, not a single graduate went back to prison after they were released. It's 2% now, which is still remarkably low when you consider that 62 to 75% of released felons end up back in prison within 5 years. To be at 2% is really remarkable, but it's because they have an education, they have a degree, they have self respect, they have a sense of
right.
self worth. They can get jobs and they can make a difference in their community. They have a strong support system as well. And I think the fact that it was privately funded was important because it made them realize this was not an entitlement, it was a gift. There were people on the outside who believed in them, who were willing to sacrifice for them. And it gave them such a sense of self worth that they worked hard. They graduated in 4 years and they made something of themselves. It was truly transformative.
Isn't that wonderful? And just the value and virtue of self-esteem. And of course, as you were reflecting on earlier, in a brave new world, I mean, in any collectivist concept, self-esteem is anathema, isn't it? It's a, it, it's an appalling idea, and that anyone would ever aspire to it or subscribe to it is to be stamped out.
Absolutely. Meritocracy is somehow oppressive. Instead of I'm happy that there are billionaires in the world because most of those billionaires have created things like this iPhone that I'm holding in my hand. I'm
Yes.
delighted that his inventors are billionaires because they gave me this computer in my hand.
Indeed. And I mean, the thing people forget in any community, in any society, um, the wealthiest person is generally someone who is getting up every morning working very, very hard for them. And and they should be very grateful that that person is doing that. But of course, as we know, it's not to be.
I know, I know.
Yeah,
But in that, in meritocracy, and I'm glad that we can aspire to create new things and take risks and figure out what we did wrong and fix it and make things better. That's really
yeah,
the essence of vegetarianism, isn't it?
it sure is. Um, Now, Joanne, in a recent communication, you mentioned that there was someone developing a libertarian themed streaming service that they were looking at launching shortly. And I had heard stories about that before. Are you able to tell us more about that?
Oh, sure. So last year at Freedom Fest in Memphis, you may remember Justin Armand and a few others with ASG Stream. It's funded by a libertarian hero, Chris Roofer, a businessman who believes in libertarian ideals and uses a lot of his money to support ideas like this. But they started out as ASG Stream, and they've now changed the name to Civil, CIVL, and
Yes.
it's going to be an organization that provides streaming services. There's going to be an Anthem channel. We're getting that started. A Freedom Fest channel. There'll be other channels devoted to other libertarian organizations. You'll be able to go to Civil, CIVL, and then go to the Freedom Fest channel, and you'll be able to see some of our best of speakers and panels and discussions. You'll be able to see many of the Anthem films that are will be available at that point. Our Persian Film Festival will be on the channel soon, and they'll be doing podcasts, and it'll be a multimedia streaming program. And it's called Civil, CIVL, and you might even want to move your podcast over to there. They don't require exclusivity, so you'll still be able to be here on X, but it'll give people a place to look for content that fits their philosophy. So it'll be sort of your one-stop libertarian media platform.
How sensational. And it's a
I love it.
yeah. Adam, have you heard of that at all?
First time hearing of it, but as you know, Dave, there's a lot of platforms now we're starting to come across where it wouldn't hurt to have our content there and vice versa too. So we'll have to see what we can do to get connected with those guys. Maybe work on something together. And I do just want to hop in here, do a little commercial break or whatever you want to call it here on ANCAP Radio. We're with Joanne Skousen, ladies and gentlemen. So if you're not familiar with Anthem Freedom Festival, you can go to Anthem Film Festival and Freedom Fest. We've talked about both. But anthemfilmfestival.com. There's a link in the thread here. You can check that one out. She's the mind behind that and many other cool things here. The floor is now technically open for callers. So if you guys did have a question for Joanne or even for Dave or myself, now is the time. Just tap the request to speak button in the bottom left corner there. We'll get you up here. But also on that note, hit the like button, the retweet button. We're going to keep rocking for another 30 minutes or so here on ANCAP Radio. And I did want to propose this question to Joanne, Dave. I know we were cooking there for a moment, but I'm just curious, Joanne. How did this all begin for you? Like, how did you first realize you were an ANCAP? A lot of people on the show like to say they were just born this way, which I can totally relate to as well. But was it like that for you, or was there an epiphany at some point?
Absolutely not. I was kind of grown up in a social democratic kind of background. No one was really political in my family. We seldom watched the news, but I grew up with this idea that government ought to fix everything. That government should just build libraries, fix roads, pay for medical supplies. I didn't understand how the money supply worked. I didn't understand about inflation. I just thought there ought to be a law and there ought to be a government to fix things. But that isn't how I lived myself. I knew for myself that I worked hard, I earned money, I babysat, I made crafts that could sell long before Etsy came along. I worked hard and I saved my money and I was very frugal. And then I went away to college and I met Mark Skousen. We both worked in the publication office at our university, and he was an economist. And the first time he talked to me about profit motive and marginal utility and supply and demand and all this,
The
I
most
realized
romantic
that's
things,
what I
right?
believed in. And so I just gradually began to recognize that how powerful not just profit money, but also the good feelings that you get from doing things. I do a lot of things not for money, um, but I do them because they make me feel good, and that's my profit motive. So I came into it quickly, and then after Mark and I got married, he became the managing editor of Bob Kephardt's Inflation Survival Letter, and that's where I met Doug Casey and Jack Pugsley, Bob Kephart, the Aden sisters, so many of the Harry Brown, so many of the heroes of the libertarian movement in the 70s and 80s came out of that association with Bob Kephart and Doug Casey. And the more I talked, the more I realized I was truly a libertarian. I'm probably more libertarian than Mark is. I believe that the best way to get things done is to let them happen naturally. And I think that's one thing that made Ronald Reagan such a good president. He had a philosophy. He didn't have to worry about short term consequences because he knew the long term consequences would be good. I think that's true for Millet as well. He'll be a good president because he has a strong philosophical foundation. So that's kind of how I came into it, just being around the libertarian community, going to all of the conferences, listening to all the speakers, eventually working at FEE, the Foundation for Economic Education, for a while. I was even asked to be president to run for president. Did you know that?
Well, that's funny you say that. I'd like to hear and to learn about that. I was going to say, do you think Dave Henderson would make a great president?
I think Dave Henderson would be a solid, philosophically solid president. I think he would be hilarious, but in a good way. I think people would be drawn to him. I think I think people would find him wonderful to listen to, great in a debate. But underneath that is this solid foundation where, yeah, he'd be a great president, and I think he could get. Um, I know you don't have a Congress, but your version of Congress in New Zealand, I think they would rally around you because you're
Yeah.
so personable and friendly and outgoing, and you just have a way of you have that knack of making people feel comfortable, and I think they would go along with you. I think you could convince them. So yeah, Dave Henderson
Uh,
for president.
that's overly flattering, Joanne. But my problem, you missed out of all of that. That I'm administratively incompetent, and in particular, I would be forgiving of everyone who, for one reason or another, was struggling with their taxes. So taxation would be gone from day one, and then I wouldn't have figured out how we get out of that pigsty to a more libertarian society. So
Well, start
I,
small. Just start in your local community.
yeah, there you go. Well, my local community is my wife and I. So and I'm sort of still working on that. So there you go.
And the pets, and the pets. Don't forget the pets.
Yeah.
But but Joanne, you said that. What was that? Your story about
Oh yeah.
someone telling you to run for president, or yeah?
So
Yeah.
we used to go to this conference called Eris, Eris, the goddess of discord. Doug
Yep,
Casey
that's right.
started it, and we met in Aspen, Colorado every summer, and we all took turns talking. You could talk about everything except your actual business. And I gave a talk one time, Confessions of an English Major, and Bill Bradford, who was the publisher and founder of Liberty Magazine, um, really liked me and liked my philosophy and so forth. And so in 1991, at the Libertarian National Convention, he started calling me and saying, Joanne, we need you to get here. We need you we want to nominate you as the Libertarian candidate. And I said, what are you talking about? I says, look, you're a woman, you're educated, you're married, you're a mother, you're religious, you're all the things that go against the stereotype of the libertarian being a fat, unmarried, bearded male living in his basement and playing video
Uh,
games. And they wanted to show that libertarians were normal, ordinary people. So it was very attractive, and but it happened to be the week that I was taking my oldest daughter and getting her started in orientation at her first year of college. And so I was there with her that same Labor Day weekend, and I said, I can't. I'm taking my daughter to college." And every morning they'd call and say, "Get on a plane. We want to nominate you." And I was flattered. I was kind of very much tempted by it. I knew I could make a difference, but I also knew that it meant traveling the country for a year. And besides her, I had four other young children at home, and it just wasn't the right time for me. But I love being able to say that I could have been president of the United States, except I had to take my daughter to school.
Isn't that a great line?
And then, of
And of
course,
course,
Harry Brown was nominated the following season, and he called and asked me to be his running mate. So that was kind of a fun idea too. I could have run as vice president with Harry Brown, but then I found out later he was offering that to anyone who would give him $25,000. So I guess I wasn't for sale.
isn't that great?
Well, what I know obviously we talked about the Malay headline this year, and him being there, and also how we're not supposed to talk about it too much, right? It's supposed to be a low key thing.
Oh, we're
But is
not
there
doing
anything
that
else
here.
going on? Is there anything going on at Freedom Fest and Anthem Film Festival this year that are new, or you'd like people to know about or be aware of?
Well, we do have Javier Milei, president of Argentina, first libertarian president elected in Latin America. So we're very excited to have him come. We are also, this is getting a lot of interest in the media. We're sponsoring with Free and Equal Elections. We're co-sponsoring with them a debate with all the major third-party candidates. So we'll be having a very formal debate on Thursday night, a 2-hour debate with I think there are 6 or 8 people right now who are going to be in the debates, and this will be broadcast between 5 and 7 Pacific time, so that it'll be at a time that people can watch it on the East Coast as well. And it's going to be a formal debate, and it's really the first debate of the season, maybe the only debate of the season that will include all of the major third party candidates. So we're very excited about being able to do that, and we have a lot of media coverage for that. We also have Lord Matt Ridley from London, coming to talk about vaccines and some of the pandemic things that were going on. Um, we have Rob Schneider. Rob Schneider is one of our Hollywood actors who's not afraid to stand up and say what he believes in. So he'll be coming to talk about his career.
That's always
Also,
nice.
he'll be headlining our Punched Up Comedy Club. So fun to have Rob Schneider come. We're still working on hoping to get Oliver Stone, but that has not been set in stone yet. So, but that would be great to have him as well.
Nice. I actually got me wondering now, just being in the film industry for at least the last 14 years. Who's really stood out to you as kind of like, we'll just call him a famous person or one of those Hollywood characters, right? That actually is pretty libertarian or anarcho-capitalist in their way of doing things.
It's a great question. What immediately came to mind was that that wonderful film that Vince Vaughn and Mel Gibson did, Heartbreak Ridge. What an amazing film! And both of them are kind of outcasts in Hollywood. Vince Vaughn because he's libertarian, Mel Gibson because he's a religious conservative man who, yes, made a terrible drunken mistake that has ruined his reputation. But I don't think it would have happened that way if he'd had a different political philosophy. But I remember seeing them at the Golden Globes, sitting together at a table, and just the sadness in their eyes as they were completely outcast. Just the two of them together at this table where they had made this wonderful film. That even Hollywood had to acknowledge deserved some awards, but they were isolated. And I admire them for standing up for what they believe in. I think they're both really good actors. I would love to have Vince Vaughn come to Freedom Fest and Anthem. Maybe we'll have him next year. Kevin Sorbo, of course, stands out. He's more conservative than libertarian. But he's making a difference. He has the courage to speak up about what's happening in Hollywood. We have a film this year called Hollywood Takeover, and it talks about uh, the influence that China has in Hollywood. That because there's such a big audience in China, all of the major studios will do whatever they say. That's why we always see a Chinese doctor or scientist or military general in most films now that saves the day to a certain extent. Um, but there are others who have the courage to speak out. Others who try to keep it to themselves because they want to work in the industry. But we're seeing more independent films that are being successful. Angel Studios, I think, is having a remarkable impact because their followers, their audience, will go to the movies. If you saw Sound of Freedom last summer, they were filling theaters for months. And at the end, James Caviezel would come out at the end of the film and make a plea. And it, you weren't going to a movie, you were joining a movement when you went to see Sound of Freedom. And so they're being very successful outside of the Hollywood industrial machine. So I think we are seeing a difference, and people are they're not woke, but they're waking up.
That's all we can really aim for, right? Is to make an impact in our circles and see where it goes. That's fascinating to me. The Vince Vaughn piece, huge fan.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, Dave, maybe he's on our list now for ANCAP Radio. What do you think?
Very much. I think it'd be fantastic if we could get him along. No, he is a star, isn't he? So and as Joanne was pointing out, that's a rare event in that environment, isn't it? And Heartbreak Ridge is such a cool movie.
No, it's so
Hey.
good.
And Joanne, do you have? I know this is a tough and unfair question, but do you have an all time favorite movie? One that you have watched repeatedly, would sit down and watch tomorrow?
One that comes to mind that comes on TV every once in a while, and I know I can be in the kitchen and I can hear one strain of the music, and I know what the movie is, and that's The Shawshank Redemption. Um, just so well done. And at the end, when the camera, when Andy and Red are finally together again, and the camera pans back, and the music swells, and the tears start, and they always cut it off before it finishes. What a great film. It was a favorite of mine even before I started working in prison, and it continues to be a favorite. Another film I really love is Sense and Sensibility, mainly because the direction by Emma Thompson is gorgeous. The way she sets up her shots, the way that she frames her characters, and then that moment at the very end when she's been so stoic her whole life and kept her emotions in, and when she realizes that the man of her dreams is not married to someone else and he has come to ask for her hand, and she just gasps and she can't control this emotion that's finally bubbling out of her. It's just one of those moments that you could see over and over again.
Uh, so, and now, given Joanne your multitudinous of talents, if you were tasked with having to to write, direct, and produce a feature film, what would the theme be? And I guess why haven't you done it?
Oh my goodness. It, that's a good question. I learned long ago about myself that I love the arts. I love theater, and I really love live theater. And I love movies, but I am not an actor, and I can't forget that I'm Joanne Skousen. I've never been able to put myself into the character sufficiently. Um, so I haven't really thought of that, of wanting to make a particular movie. I don't have an answer to that. I'll probably come up with an answer half an hour from now, but I
Sure.
haven't really thought of it. I'll tell you what I would like. I have a book that I wrote about the women in the Bible who are direct ancestors of Jesus Christ, and they're a really interesting, eclectic group. Some are, the wives of prophets, but others are people who were outside of the Israelites and were kind of grafted in. People like um, Bathsheba and Ruth and Tamar and Rahab. I would love to see that made into a series, a mini series, because the take I have on it is that these women were remarkable leaders who used choice and accountability to rescue their families and set their families on the right path. And they've been
Right.
given a bad rap. They're always called. There are even books about them called the bad girls of the Bible because they had the gumption to do things. I would love to see that book turned into a mini series showing how these women in Genesis in particular are stronger than the men in the stories. The stories are really about these women. They're the ones who act. They're the ones who put their family. They lead the way in every one of those stories. But we tend to see the stories through the eyes of the prophets because those are the patriarchs of the family. But the
Sure.
women are actually the stars of the story. So that's my answer. I want you to make my book into a TV miniseries.
Yeah, cool. And I
Is the
didn't
name?
know that, Joanne. So
Go
tell
ahead.
us the name of the book.
It's called Matriarchs of the Messiah.
It's how
It's a
delightful.
terrible title. It was called Mothers of God. I wrote it as Mothers of God. Isn't that a great title? Mothers of
That's
God.
fantastic. That's
And at the
fantastic.
last minute, the publisher, like 3 weeks before publication, the publisher said, we really can't call it Mothers of God. We're going to have to change the title. And so they
No.
came up with this euphemism. They changed mothers to matriarchs and God to Messiah. And so now it's
Yeah.
Matriarchs of the Messiah, which nobody can remember. So someday
Uh,
when the copyright reverts back to me, I'll rewrite it and I'll send it out as Mothers of God.
I want to know what happened
uh,
to Bad Girls of the Bible. Did somebody already use that one? Because I think that's your magnet right
I'm sorry,
there.
say that again.
You said use the phrase "Bad Girls of the Bible." So if that one's not already taken,
Oh,
I think you'll get
yeah, that one's
plenty of,
already
plenty of.
taken.
that's a cool name. You're right.
Yeah.
Well, it's an interesting thing, isn't it, Joanne? Is that you and I don't have to look back that far to remember a time when the whole industry was about distribution, because distribution was so controlled and so tight and technologically so difficult. But today the whole world's come around where it's all about product, isn't it? I mean,
Yes.
distribution is just everywhere and so readily available. And I often reflect, and I don't know much about industry statistics, but I often reflect, it just must have turned the industry on its ear. The number of actors who are now employed, the number of production staff that are now employed must have just gone nuts, did it?
It's overwhelming and it all comes from streaming. We had Netflix and Prime. That was basically it. And everybody had those two platforms, and you either went to the Cineplex or you watched something on Netflix or Amazon Prime. And then during COVID, Cineplex closed and streaming services proliferated. And now there are over 200, probably well over 200 now, different streaming services, major streaming services, probably 50. It's frustrating to me because I'll be, scrolling through social media, I'll see ads for a movie and I'll say, "Oh, I really want to see that movie," but I have to sign up for a whole new streaming service in order to watch it, or I
Right.
or I have to get a membership in Daily Wire or something like that. It's frustrating to me that I can't just go to the movie theater anymore, and I can't even just watch Netflix and Amazon. I need 300 streaming services, and then I still don't know what's available because I'm not seeing trailers. I think you could develop a streaming service that would just show trailers and where to see the movies, and that would probably be successful. So
Yeah.
it's an
There you
amazing
go.
time for distribution. And it's kind of becoming very egalitarian because instead of having a handful of blockbusters that are making millions and millions of dollars, now you just have a steady stream of films that could maybe make back what they spent. And making films is so much cheaper now because you can make a film on an iPhone. I had a film last year it was filmed in Iran by a director who was in California, and his cinematographer was using an iPhone on the streets of Tehran, and he directed it through WhatsApp. Just an amazing sense of technology of what we can do directing a film on the other side of the world and doing it out in the open and telling people that they were making basically a PSA saying how bad it is for women to be singers, when really they were making a film about a woman who had the courage to be a singer. So it's
Uh,
remarkable what technology can do today.
well, uh, Joanne, here's a question that will age you. How do you still buy DVDs?
Oh, no, I don't. I don't, but I do sometimes buy. But here's kind of a sadness. My daughter was pointing this out that, for years she collected DVDs and gave DVDs for Christmas and birthday presents and has this huge collection. Now she has them on a hard drive. But what happens when a movie is not available on Netflix or Amazon or one of the other streaming services? A lot of films are just plain not available anymore, and
Yeah.
nobody has a DVD player, and there's no way to see those great movies that we enjoyed in the 80s and 90s, because they're not on a service and you don't have a DVD player any longer. So I think at some point we're going to look back and be sad that everything we own is in the cloud and
Mm.
something happens and the cloud disappears.
Yeah. Well, I used to buy DVDs just at a ridiculous rate. Um,
Yeah.
God knows how many I have. I must have 2 or 3 thousand of them. It's horrific, but and I still have them there. They're sitting in a room, and it's amazing. Younger people who, of course, look at them and just look at me as if I'm some anachronistic freak, and. But I do explain to them that I'm sort of hanging out for some EMP event or something, where the internet's going to go down, and I'll be the most popular house in the neighborhood because I'll still have electricity and I'll still have a DVD player, and I'll be able to go back and drag out all these other movies that I haven't seen forever that aren't available, as you identified, on a streaming service anyway, and be able to watch those. But you're right, I still hear of a movie and think, wow, I'd love to see that. And I can't find it on a streaming service. And New Zealand, of course, where I'm mostly domiciled, has a different feed, Netflix feed, Amazon feed than elsewhere in the world. So we don't have the same menu available to us. And so I have to go on Amazon, and I always find a DVD and get it shipped out. So I assume it'll linger on for a while longer, won't it? But you're right; it is terribly sad that happened.
I remember
Mm.
seeing a film set in a dystopian future. I can't remember the name of it now, but that's one of the things they have in their bunker is a DVD player and movies, lots of DVDs, and that's one of the things they do during the 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 years that they're spending underground, waiting for the radiation to die away. So you're probably smart. It's a little bit like keeping all your vinyl records. Eventually, they'll come back around and be
That's
collector's
right.
items.
Isn't that
That's
interesting?
ex-
Well, I guess I'll do the math one day, but I've probably got 10 years worth there for the bunker anyway, Joanne. So I should be comfortable.
any VHS over there, Dave?
No, my VHS, I think, has long been tipped out, but I think I've got a half a dozen of those sitting in the shelves. But you barely probably know what a DVD is, do you, Adam? So,
Well, I know, I know. I'm actually feeling more a part of the conversation than you guys think I am, and
ah,
it's yeah, I'm sitting here thinking, do DVDs make us that old now? I guess they
I
do.
don't think so. They came out
Because
in
I
the
remember
in the 90s, right?
90s,
VHS
yeah,
I think
90s.
late '90s,
DVDs in the
late '90s. Yeah.
90s, and they were so much more expensive than VHS. But my kids remember going to visit my parents, and my parents had 3 DVDs, and they watched Mrs. Doubtfire over and over and over again. But now they just have the sweetest memory of that movie. Whenever they think of Mrs. Doubtfire, they think of Grandma and Grandpa. So
Wow,
good
that's
memories of watching
delightful.
movies together.
Was Mrs. Doubtfire. I feel like that movie's kind of becoming a reality based on the political climate today too, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, right.
And it's a classic though. It is a classic. Robin Williams, funny guy. I was talking about a Robin Williams. What was the one? Good Morning Vietnam. I was just talking to someone about that one today. So
Well, I would like to say this. I think that we are reaching a tipping point, and we're seeing a change. Where we've gone too far in the direction of wokeness and what it's doing. And I'll mention one thing that my daughter mentioned to me this weekend. She has a dear friend who is extremely liberal, extremely Democrat, and also Jewish. And she contacted my daughter recently and asked her, "Are you voting for Trump?" And Haley said, I don't. She doesn't like to talk politics with her New York friends, and she said, I don't know how, because she said, and her friend said, because I am. Now,
Ah,
this is a person who hated Trump, but she said, when I see what's happening now and all this death to the Jews and how far this has gone, and I feel like I've been lied to my whole life by this liberal Democrat philosophy, and I don't believe it anymore, and I've got to find something else to believe in, and I think I'm going to vote for Trump. And that was
that's
shocking.
hilarious.
But
That's
I'm also
sensational.
I think it's gone to a point where the emperor has been naked for a long time, but finally people are starting to see that he has no clothes, and I think it's changing. And we have a film this year called Undivide Us. It's going to be our opening night film, and it talks about the filmmakers brought together groups of people from very different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different sexual persuasions, different political philosophies, different religious philosophies, brought them together to communicate, just to communicate and talk about what they believed, what their concerns were, what their backgrounds were. And then they went even smaller and they paired them up, very diverse people, and had them go to each other's towns and spend time with each other's families and friends. And in the end, these people genuinely liked each other. They didn't change their ideas, they still had their own philosophies, but they had come to a sense of understanding, of compassion, of recognizing the rights of others to have different ideas and where those different ideas might come from. And they left as friends, no longer divided.
Right.
And that's my hope, um, that we can make a difference. Sometimes with storytelling, sometimes with bringing different ideas together, like we're going to do with this debate, bringing so many different Jill Stein and so many different people are coming that we wouldn't normally think of as being libertarian in any way. But learning to listen to each other, understand each other's backgrounds. There's a play called Trifles, and there's a line from it that I absolutely love. It says, this woman says, "We all go through the same kind this sorry, we all go through the same things. It's just a different kind of the same things." What a powerful idea that is, to bring us together, that we all go
Right.
through romance, loss, grief, joy,
Sure.
happiness.
Sure.
We just
Yeah.
go through them in different ways, and how
Yeah.
uniting that can be. So I'm hoping that we can undivide us and bring us
Yeah.
together with a sense of choice, accountability, individuality, and freedom.
Well, isn't that fantastic? And I mean that's a strong reflection of what you and Mark do, and particularly with Freedom Fest is, and I often reflect on the purpose of this radio, ANCAP Radio, and a number of other initiatives. Is that people instinctively often have a view of things, but they haven't aren't able to articulate it as a coherent philosophy. But of course, events like yours, Freedom Fest, help them as they interact with other people and they listen to speakers. It helps them to actually crystallize a meaningful philosophy that they can then articulate and feel very, very comfortable with. And as a consequence, they become very able disseminators of these ideas, don't they? And with that, they it helps them enrich their lives. So, Joanne, I know we're getting to a close on this show, but that what you guys do is just sensational, and long may you keep doing it, because it's a fantastic thing. And anyone who has the opportunity, and anyone who's listening, either live or on replay, if you get the opportunity or the inclination, you must go to Freedom Fest, because it is such a celebration of these ideas, and the opportunity to rub shoulders with a whole bunch of like-minded people is a wonderful and very valuable experience.
Well, thank you very much. It's been a great pleasure being with you, and I hope to see you all at Freedom Fest and Anthem, and in future years. We'd love to have you become regulars.
Thank you so much, Joanne.
Absolutely. I just got to hammer that home. It's a great festival conference to attend, and have had so many great relationships come from just attending that. So, ladies and gents, if you guys haven't been there yet, the link's down below. Also, anthemfilmfest.com, or is it Anthem Film Festival?
Yeah.
Spell it all out.
.com.
Anthemfilmfestival.com.
And we have a Media Row, and a lot of people come and do their podcast from Media Row, because we have so many wonderful speakers that you can just line them up and do your broadcast with them.
There we go, planting seeds.
Yep.
We're planting seeds here. So yes, Joanne, thank you so much for investing your most valuable resource with us here today, your time. Same to our listeners and viewers, whether you guys are with us here live or on replay, we really appreciate it. Make sure you check out all of the links below in the thread and in the show notes. We'll see you here live next week at 3 p.m. EST as usual with another incredible guest. For now, Adam Carswell, joined today by Dave Henderson and Joanne Skousen here on ANCAP Radio. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.